Good evening, Hall of Fame Dynasty members. It is I, your commissioner, once again, and we are here with the Week 2 review of MLB, obviously the MLB Hall of Fame Dynasty League. It's been a weird week for me. I apologize for it being late this week, but I think you guys will enjoy it. I think it'll be a lot of fun for everyone. But besides that, I mean, it's been 2 weeks, and it's been two very interesting weeks. We've had a lot of injuries. We've had a lot of obviously good performances, some big surprises, and we'll definitely be getting into that tonight. And we will be going and doing an NBA review for the NBA championship. I know we haven't gotten to it just yet, but we will be, and that'll be coming soon. Other than that, why don't we get into tonight's show? I'm excited, and thank you guys for being so patient with it, being patient with me. I've had a lot going on with a buddy of mine, so thank you for everything. So let's get into tonight's show now that I have your attention. And actually, I forgot to pull it up, so give me 2 seconds. But anyways, I mean, we've had a lot going on. Obviously, the real-life Yankees and Red Sox still aren't performing well. The Cubs had a big meltdown over the weekend with Kyle Schwarber trying to chase after a because he didn't agree with the call. We've had the White Sox playing well against the Royals. We've had the Braves playing really well, and the Brewers obviously just being top team in their division. Other than that, I really haven't checked the standings much. It's been busy for me, but if you guys have anything that you found interesting, let me know. So why don't we get into tonight's show as I get this pulled up? To start out this week in baseball, we actually had Chris Davis finally breaking his hitless streak last week, which was within, I think, just an RBI single to right field. And his last hit before that was on September 14th of 2018. So he went a good half year before getting his next hit. That's brutal for anyone. That's a tough thing to do when you just got to keep playing day after day after day. And yes, he's getting paid a ton of money. I understand that. We all understand that. But even then, that's a hard thing to do. Nobody wants to fail like that. Nobody wants to go hitless for that long. And once again, I forgot to do the share screen. I was trying to pull up the show in the meantime, just kind of letting it go as I did this. So since it's taking a little bit longer today for whatever reason, there we go. And this hide. Why is this not present? I said. There we go. So obviously Monday was Jackie Robinson Day. If you guys don't know, Jackie Robinson wore number 42. Everyone wears it on that day. Most of you should know that by now. And I'm hoping the show is going to pop up at some point so I can see it. Because for some reason, my computer is being awfully derpy slow today. Oh, my goodness. There it is, finally. And then on this day in 2010, these are from Monday. Unfortunately, I had these set then. I didn't look at it now. On Monday in 2010, Marlins infielder Jorge Cantu set an MLB record with at least one hit and one RBI in his team's first 10 games. Pretty impressive, if you ask me. I mean, the fact that you're able to get both a hit and an RBI for 10 games straight, that's tough. Also on Monday in 1994, Kelly Wunsch became the third player and the first starting pitcher ever to strike out 5 batters in 1 inning. Obviously, I'm not 100% sure how that happened, but the fact that you are able to get 5 outs in one inning, obviously 3 outs possible, it's impressive as all hell. So he became the first one to do it, and that was in the Golf League, actually. On this day in baseball. So pulling up today, just real quick, let's see. Let's look back at, say, mid-2000s. There we go. On this day at Citi Field, Gary Sheffield became the 25th player to hit 500 career home runs. And that was in 2009. That's one of the biggest things. To think that only 25 players had done it really shows just how big of a deal it really is to reach 500 home runs. because not only do you have to have enough power, but you have to play long enough to do it. So that's this week in baseball. No crazy stories like last week. So let's move on to current individual league leaders. Right now, a lot actually changed over this last week when it comes down to the leaders. Cody Bellinger still has the run lead at 22, but the ones that did change were league leaders in home runs, which is Chris Davis with 10. He went on a power binge. You have RBIs going to Domingo Santana with 23 on the season. And then D. Gordon remains the stolen base leader. There are plenty of people right behind him looking to steal that from him. And then batting average remains with Tim Anderson, and Cody Bellinger actually leads the league in OPS. It would be Mike Trout had he not been hurt and had enough at-bats to qualify, but he was just below that mark. And then in pitching, with 15 innings pitched at least, you have 3 people with quality starts. Jose Barrios has 3. Brad Keller and Garrett Cole also have 3 now, respectively going to the Braves, Astros, and Rockies. And then with walks allowed, we have lots of pitchers with 1, but a lot of them didn't qualify as they were relief pitchers. But this one goes to Zach Eflin, I have no idea. Marchavicius, I guess is how you would say his name. And then Derek Rodriguez actually has 1 on the season. So it's pretty impressive, as all of these pitchers have had at least 15 innings pitched. And then strikeouts, 3-way tie as well with Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, and Blake Snell at 36. Unfortunately, Blake Snell is on the injured list now, so he's going to lose that coming up. That was with a broken toe or a strained toe, one of the two. I believe it was broken. And surprisingly, your ERA league leader right now is Joe Musgrove with 15.1 innings pitched for the Houston Astros at 0.00. He hasn't been – I know that number makes it sound like he's been spectacular, but he's had some up and down innings, but he's pitching very, very well. And then your current whip leader is Nick Margevicius at 0.625. So he's not even allowing 1 hit or walk per inning, pitching very, very well for the San Diego Padres in real life and obviously the fantasy Yankees. And then your current saves and holds leader did switch from last week with Shane Green at 7, now belonging to Kirby Yates with 9 saves and holds. That's going to be a category that fluctuates week to week because of the opportunities that are provided to closers or to relief pitchers in the bullpen. So there's your league leaders, a lot of different names from last week. Good to see some other names in there and other teams involved as well. Now, moving on to the injured list. This one is not as long as last week. We don't have as much to cover this time. But there are definitely some more updates and players finally getting healthy, which is great, not just for fantasy, but for real life as well, because we want to see the best players out there. Nobody wants to sit there and wonder who these names are and struggle to figure out who the hell is on the field at the time. So looking at it, we have Mike Fultonevich, who will begin his rehab. He had a rehab start on Monday, so he may return this weekend. And then the Chicago White Sox are actually getting healthy with Francisco Lindor beginning his rehab assignment and then Shohei Ohtani actually being cleared to face live pitching. Obviously, he won't be pitching this year, but he will be returning as the Angels DH at some point because Justin Bour isn't an everyday DH, and obviously Albert Pujols is not an everyday first baseman. And then we have the Houston Astros, which have had a brutal last few days and week because of the fact that they lost Andrew Benintendi to a foot injury. Looks like he'll avoid the injured list at least for now. Same with Nicholas Castellanos with a sprained toe. And then Arodys Vizcaíno originally did show up as a shoulder strain, but he is now out for the rest of the season, as I didn't see the exact diagnosis on it, but if I pull it up here, I know he is out for the rest of the season with shoulder surgery. So that's a brutal hit to the Astros. Obviously, he was counting on the Braves being very well and hopefully him being the closer. And the Braves bullpen has been a huge mess so far. So they really needed him. And that's a big blow to the fantasy Astros and Kevin. And then finally, Ryan Borucki, not a huge loss for them. He was moved to the 60-day injured list. He can return in May, I believe. That'll be enough time because they moved him to the 60-day injured list retroactively, so he has some time before he comes back. Now, looking at the Dodgers, they lost Dellin Betances with shoulder inflammation end of May. Other than that, the rest here just kind of will blow through them. Jason Kipnis is back for the Marlins. David Dahl should be back pretty soon as well. Rougned Odor, unfortunately, was lost for the Twins to a knee sprain, along with the Yankees losing Tyler Skaggs to an ankle and Gary Sanchez to a calf. Gary Sanchez is a great player, a lot of power for a catcher, but he just can't seem to stay healthy year in and year out. And then the last two names that we have here are David Robertson of the Cardinals with elbow inflammation, and John Lester, as you all know, pulled his hamstring running the bases. This is why pitchers shouldn't hit. They shouldn't need to, because then teams lose their ace or lose one of their best pitchers. And it's a brutal loss for not only the fantasy Blue Jays, but the Cubs as well, who are in tatters. So why don't we move on and look back at week 2 and see what exactly happened. So going into this matchup, we had the Toronto Blue Jays coming off a very good week 1, while the Colorado Rockies they weren't bad in week 1, but they weren't great. They didn't have the start they had wanted, but they were able to recover this last week as they went 11-1 over the Toronto Blue Jays. Unfortunately, that's a brutal hit for Steve and his Blue Jays. I know he was sick this last week. I'm sure he was hoping for a win, hoping to keep that winning streak going, but it didn't happen this week. So it moves the Blue Jays up just below 500, while the Colorado Rockies are able to take a huge jump in the standings and jump to the top of their division. So why don't we look at this matchup? Really, it wasn't too close on the offensive side. You can see the Rockies had power. They had stolen bases. They had average. They had everything you could really, really want out of a matchup like this. What it really came down to was more the pitching was a little bit closer, especially when it came to walks, quality starts, ERA. I mean, the Rockies had a 4.5 and the Blue Jays had a 5.73. When you're throwing out a 4.5 ERA, most of the time you're not expecting to win that category. The Rockies were able to hold on to it and be happy with what they were able to get out of their pitching staff and walk away with a good week. Team MVP for the Colorado Rockies was obviously Jose Altuve, as he absolutely just filled up the stat sheet with home runs, stolen bases, average, everything you could ask for. And that was the type of second baseman that the Colorado Rockies needed. They need him to perform the way they expect him to if they want to have a repeat win like they did last year. Pulling him up here, if I can find him. There it is. 10 hits out of 25 at bats, so 400 average, 6 home runs, 10 RBIs in one single week. And this was not an extended week. That's why he is the Rockies team MVP. And then once again for the Toronto Blue Jays, it was third baseman Anthony Rendon, who had 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, and very good average in OPS. 6 runs to top it off, scoring almost a run a day, which you really can't argue. Unfortunately, guys like Mookie Betts and Bryce Harper and Manny Machado and Jose Abreu had really, really slow weeks, all of them hitting below the 250 mark. Really brutal week for the Blue Jays offense. So let's see if they can kick it up in week 3. Moving on, we had the Chicago White Sox taking on the Miami Marlins, and all the Marlins did all week was talk, and talk trash after trash after trash, and they were down. They were sure that they were going to win 9-3. Well, they had the score correct, but it did not go in their favor. They were correct about the score, so maybe we should get a few more predictions out of Chris. Maybe he'll be right with the score, maybe not the winner. But good call there by Chris and his Marlins. So this does bring the Chicago White Sox up to 18-6 at the top of the Hank Aaron division, while the Marlins fall to 6-17-1, which does put them at the bottom of the not only not only the Jackie Robinson division, but the entire league as well. They are currently in 10th place. They've got a lot of work to do if they want to make the playoffs this year, if they want to prove everyone wrong. So they better get to work. Let's take a look here. As much as the score said 9-3 in favor of the White Sox, I didn't realize how close this matchup really was when it came down to it. Putting the show together is what made me realize just how close it was. Obviously, you can see that both teams were really close on the offensive side, and the only two things that really ran away were the ratio stats and average and OPS. Stolen bases was pretty much a given to the White Sox at that point, but everything else was a run here, a home run here, RBI there. Really just kind of real close all week. Made the pressure get put on everyone. And then even with pitching, it was real close. 5 quality starts to 3, 1 walk difference. Both had an ERA over 5. However, the difference really came in WHIP, with the Marlins being at 1.6 while the White Sox were at 1.27. I mean, these two teams played their asses off, and the Marlins gave the White Sox a great run. It just didn't fit in their favor, unfortunately. So looking at this matchup, obviously Cody Bellinger, team MVP for the Chicago White Sox, second week in a row. Not only did he have 2 home runs, he had 2 stolen bases on top of it, 5 runs scored. Excellent week with almost a 400 average and an OPS over 1.0. Excellent week there for him. He was really the main offensive piece for the Chicago White Sox. I mean, you had guys like Alex Bregman had a decent week, but everyone else just kind of was real close on who the team MVP would be. And actually, now that I look at it, it should have been Pete Alonso probably with 3 home runs and 6 RBIs. I must have skipped over him. Eloy Jimenez could have been in the running, but it is what it is with Cody Bellinger. Then for the Miami Marlins, this one was pretty quick for me. Team MVP goes to shortstop Jurickson Profar with 2 stolen bases, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, did everything he could for the Miami Marlins, and is actually playing really, really well for the real-life Oakland Athletics, and that's what they needed. I mean, at least this last week he did overall, not performing the best, but he's doing what he can for fantasy. Moving on to our third matchup of the week, we have the LA Dodgers taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. You've got Chris Barnes taking on Jared. You've got a great matchup here. These two teams know each other well. These two managers have gone at it before. And I didn't see this matchup going this way, but the Cardinals actually dropped this week after playing their asses off against the Rockies, where they fell to 8. They had 4 category wins, then that's it. So the Dodgers walk away 8-4-0 on the week. Excellent week for them, especially after coming off a disappointing week in week 1. They were able to move back up, which is good for them. They are now second in the Jackie Robinson division with a total of 13 wins and 11 losses, while the Cardinals dropped to third with 9-13-2. They just seem to love those ties in every league that we have. Jared, I don't know what it is. I don't know why you love ties, but you usually seem to collect a good amount of them between all of our leagues. 1 second on that. It's decently warm here in Illinois, so I was opening the window. So looking at this matchup real quick, the Dodgers dominated really when it came down to it. On the offensive side of the ball, at the plate, the Dodgers were pretty locked in. They were able to get a good average, good OPS, and they really didn't suffer anywhere in terms of runs, of getting the offense going. They had more than enough of it. When it came, the real close part of this matchup came to the pitching. And if you look at it, I mean, both pitching staffs played pretty well, didn't hold runners off the bases as well as you would like, but the Dodgers were able to get enough in the categories that they needed to walk away with a good 8-4-0 win, putting them in second place, like I mentioned. Team MVP for the Dodgers was surprisingly outfielder Marcell Ozuna, who had an excellent week. He had power. He had a little bit of speed. He was able to put together some real good games and be an offensive force. 4 home runs within a week, 1 stolen base, 8 RBIs, excellent week. And that was only 19 at-bats. So you really think about it, usually you're looking at 20 or 25 at bats for most players. And he didn't do that. He did it very well. Even though his defensive blunder was absolute catastrophe, he did not let that sit with him. And it's funny that a real-life Cardinal destroyed the fantasy Cardinals when it came down to it. With the Cardinals, as you can see, they had a slow offensive week, so their team MVP belonged to Blake Snell, who led that pitching staff to the promised land for the most part. Unfortunately, he hit the injured list like we talked about, but he had 12 innings pitched, 20 strikeouts, only allowed 1 run in that time. Or actually, allowed 1 run in that time for a .75 ERA. So Blake Snell was great. Unfortunately, he was about the only good pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals this last week. In our fourth matchup of the week, we've got the Minnesota Twins taking on the Atlanta Braves, and I would deem this one the battle of the Hank Aaron division. This was one where the Twins were looking to get a foot up on the Braves, while the Braves have been vulnerable. They haven't played their best baseball just yet, but unfortunately they just fell short of it as they had 5 wins, 6 losses, and 1 tie, with the Atlanta Braves taking this week. The Twins now dropped to 9th in the league, 5th in the Hank Aaron division, while the Atlanta Braves kind of tread water around that 500 mark, as you can see with their record at 13-10-1. Really not the start that the Braves wanted, but their offense played a big role this week. Even as well as the Minnesota Twins played, the Atlanta Braves stepped up their game that much more. Both teams with double-digit home runs. The Braves combined for almost 130 runs and RBIs total, while the Twins sat around 95. Both teams had the speed this week with 10 stolen bases, and both were locked in at the plate. They were solid. They were taking great at bats. They were getting the power. They were drilling the ball or the pitch that when it came to them. They were sitting on it, and they got their pitches when they needed it. Really what it came down to, though, was a little bit here and there. The Twins actually had the better pitching staff this week, as they were able to allow less walks, didn't get as many strikeouts, but they were able to put together a 3.48 ERA and a .968 whip, along with some good saves and holds. And when you look back at this one, you've got 2 team MVPs that really, really deserved it. And that was shortstop Elvis Andrus, who I dealt to him this past offseason. I might regret it, I might not. But he had everything. He filled the stat sheet. 2 stolen bases, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, and an average over 500. There were plenty of guys that pitched really well or played really well, but I think it deserved to go to shortstop Elvis Andrus on a bad Texas Rangers team. He is doing everything he can to carry that offense. So I give it to him this week. When it comes to the Atlanta Braves, this is a guy I never expected to have as a team MVP, and that would be Austin Meadows, who had 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, and a stolen base in there as well for the Tampa Bay Rays and Fantasy Braves. Meadows was absolutely locked in as he played against the White Sox. He played against Toronto last week as well. So he took advantage of his competition and absolutely just made him a fantasy stud last week. And in our final matchup of the week was a matchup I didn't expect to be as close as it was. I didn't expect it to be as exciting because you had the Yankees, who are pretty beat up right now. You have the Astros, who had a pretty good week 1, but we didn't know if the Astros were for real, if they're not a contender. Going into the season, they didn't seem like they were going to be, but 2 weeks in, they've shown that they can play really good baseball. They walk away with a tie week with 6 wins and 6 losses. Both teams played pretty well in their given matchup. So let's break this one down, as the Astros sit at 14-9-1 and the Yankees at 10-14-0. Looking at it, neither team had a great week, but the Astros once again took advantage of who they were facing. pretty similar offenses, but the Houston Astros, when they had guys on base, they took advantage of it. Guys like Jake Bauers with 3 RBIs. You have Dansby Swanson with 9 RBIs. Overall, not a great week, but that's what it came down to, was the speed and taking advantage of opportunities when they were given to them. Obviously, neither team had the great batting average or power, but it is what it is. You can't have everything every given week. And when with this, you look at the pitching side, the Yankees actually, this is where they surprisingly shined. They had guys like Carlos Rodon have a rough week. Chris Sale had a rough week as well, but they got good pitching performances out of Luis Sessa, Max Fried, Nick Margevicius, like we talked about earlier in the show. You had guys that really aren't supposed to be dominant pitching performers, but they are contributing, and they are the reason that the Yankees were able to walk away with a tied week. They kept WHIP down. They kept the ERA down. They were able to get more strikeouts and didn't come at the cost of walks. You can see they had their control, and they played very, very well. Oh, and then one last thing. Team MVP for the Houston Astros. Once again, a guy I did not expect to be a team MVP at any point, and it would be Kevin Pillar. Ever since he went to the San Francisco Giants, he has been playing his ass off. He's been getting hits. He's been getting power. They're letting him run. He filled up the stat sheet. He played very well with 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, and a stolen base. Not really the average, but he had the power to go with it. So really there was a balance. And then for the Yankees, you had starting pitcher Justin Verlander. He was one of the biggest pieces of the Yankees team this past week. And that's the reason that the Yankees were able to keep everything on the pitching side in clean order. So that's what it is. This is actually week 3 matchups. I did not update it. I apologize. Actually, I updated everything but the title coming down to it. So in week 3, we have the Colorado Rockies taking on the Houston Astros. We obviously have a good idea of what the Colorado Rockies are. They were not they didn't sell off. They were looking to repeat. They bought into this season. Whereas you have the Houston Astros, who are a very up-and-coming team who obviously are above the 500 mark. They faced 2 lowly teams in the first 2 weeks, with the Yankees being beat up. And then in week 1, they faced off against the Miami Marlins. So the Astros have taken advantage, and this is a good prove-it week for the Astros. I don't know who's going to win, but at this moment, it's actually in the favor of the Astros, surprisingly enough, and I didn't even know that until I looked. Be that as it may, I'm still going with the Colorado Rockies. I think the cream of the crop will rise to the top here, and holy shit, it's actually not close whatsoever right now in terms of offense, and you guys will see it next week, but damn, Kevin, your team is playing its ass off, and it's Wednesday. You might set some offensive records if this continues this way. I don't know how the hell your team is doing it, but damn, they are kicking ass. I still have the Rockies picked to win this week overall. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I'm kind of giving you praise, but also shooting you down, Kevin. I get it. It is what it is. But your team is playing its ass off. Moving on to the second game, we have the Miami Marlins taking on the Minnesota Twins. The bottom of the barrel. This is the bottom of the barrel week for these two. They don't want to be the last or the worst team standing, so these two teams are going to play their asses off. I've got the Minnesota Twins winning this week, though. The Miami Marlins have yet to be able to prove who exactly they are. We know that the Twins have some injuries when it comes to guys like Mike Clevenger and Gene Segura are getting bumped up. Chris Archer obviously suspended. But the Minnesota Twins have a good team. They just need to get hot. And if they can, they'll be a very good team. They'll be a very tough team to face, just like last year. So I've got the Twins winning this week. Now, this one we've got really, if you asked me at the start of the season, I would have said that it was the Blue Jays would be the dominant team. They would play very well as they got guys like Bryce Harper and Jose Ramirez and Mookie Betts. You had teams that played their ass off. But at this point, I don't know what to believe about these two teams because the Blue Jays offense is really cold. The Dodgers are playing really well, and they upset the Cardinals last week. So I'm going to go with the Toronto Blue Jays for now and believe that the talent is there and say that they finally start to pick it up. We saw the Dodgers sell off some of their pieces this offseason, and I'm as hot of a start as they've had. I don't think it'll continue all season long. So give me the Toronto Blue Jays in this matchup. Finally, starting with the two commissioners games, we've got the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Atlanta Braves. Cardinals coming off a weird, bad week for them. The Braves coming off a very close win for them. And just because of the moves that the Cardinals made this offseason, I don't think that they're a true contender at this moment, but I could be wrong. So I'm going to go with the Atlanta Braves. I think they've got the talent as much as it's a very top-heavy team. If they're healthy, they're going to be tough to beat. And then finally, we've got the New York Yankees taking on the Chicago White Sox in a battle of the Hank Aaron division. Yankees are obviously trying to get above the 500 mark. The White Sox want to continue their winning streak with 2 weeks at 9-3. They're hoping to stick with it. And I'm going to go with the Chicago White Sox. They still have a couple of call-ups possibly coming. We know Vlad Jr. is coming at some point. Their offense could use a little bit of a boost with guys like Harrison Bader getting injured. You've got Yohan Moncada obviously being taken off of today's game, out of today's game for precautionary reasons. So if they can get healthy, they will be a tough team to beat. And the Yankees, they're really banged up. They're missing about half of their offense, really, with Gary Sanchez being injured, Giancarlo Stanton, and their pitching has been up and down. So give me the Chicago White Sox in this matchup. That's it for this week, guys. Any comments? I'd love to hear it. If you guys want to be on the show, if you want to be a part of this, all you have to do is tell me. I would love to have you guys on. It's more fun when there's more voices. More debate, things like that. Let me know. I'm willing to do it. If you guys want to host a show, tell me and I'll get you guys on. I'd love to. But thank you guys for everything. I'll actually be going through some pickups probably next week. I didn't have the time to put together another segment, but I want to do something else and I kind of want to leave it a surprise. So let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys have a good week, and let's see what happens in week 3. I can't believe how fast this season is already going. So I will talk to you guys later. Keep setting those fantasy lineups, and keep it real, guys.